Welcome to Millennial Z and Boomer X. I'm Boomer X,
I'm Millennial Z.
and today we're going to talk about people, their pets and animals, and the relationship over the years since I was a little kid and how it's going now or what we see about it. And of course, what Millennial Z has seen about it over the years too. Sure it's changed even for him. Uh, I know I'm going to trigger a lot of people, and that is not my intent. I'm just here to tell people what I've experienced, my thoughts about it, and see how it's changed, and give you people another perspective because I really like animals. I had some really good dogs, a few cats growing up, and I grew up on a farm in southeastern Louisiana. So we had animals all the time, but I was born in 1966, and for us, animals were a resource and a companion too. But if they didn't have some purpose, they weren't around. We just ignored them, you know. Uh, and it is definitely not like that now.
Yeah, for sure. There's there's a lot more worshiping, I would put it on
Oh,
of animals.
you'd even. I mean, I call it that because it's changed radically for me.
It depends on the person. I think most people, you get your radical, cat ladies that are definitely, and dog ladies now that start putting their dogs in sweaters and their little Shih Tzus and Pomeranians and
Yeah, well,
whatnot.
that didn't exist when I was a kid, and I remember
Yeah.
clearly everything pretty much, except for, certain things from the time since I was 3. I remember my 3rd birthday and very clearly, and I can think back and remember things. So I can remember things back to 1969 pretty clearly.
Hmm.
And I go back and we didn't live on a farm when I was 3. We lived in a small town, Mandeville, which is much larger now. But when we moved to Folsom, it we lived in a little house that was unfinished, and we had chickens, pigs, cows, dogs, cats, and we were getting more animals this time. We got a horse, we got another cow, we got another pig, we got more chickens,
Hmm.
so and more dogs. Um, and next door to us was a horse farm, so we had them all around, and I was fine with it. We were small kids. We moved out there when I just turned the summer I turned 7. My brother turned 6, and we that's just the way it was. But those animals, I mean, we ate them. So,
Right.
and
To
and
put
I
it
tell you,
bluntly.
yeah. So if except the dogs, well,
Well,
we're in the
times got
U.S.
rough.
Yeah, so they didn't. But those dogs were guard dogs. They kept the animals from killing our chickens, pigs, and cows. They
Yeah.
protected things. They let us know when people were coming up that a lot. We were a quarter mile off of the highway, so when they're coming up to a long drive, there were no lights out there. We were in the dark.
Hmm.
We had 1.5 channels on the television if we had the antenna just right. We had to
Ooh.
we had to turn the antenna. It was an outside antenna. Rabbit ears didn't work. We were too far out. New Orleans was the closest city, and it was a good 50 miles straight
Yeah.
down, at least that, probably 60. So,
Y'all living that posh life. 2 channels. Jeez.
right, well, 1.5, because one, if we pointed it at the transmitter, and a half during the evenings when there wasn't as much radio wave noise, we could turn it and catch it. I don't remember I think it was 6 and 8 back in the
Hmm.
day. But that was it. That's what I didn't see Sesame Street unless I was over at somebody's house, and they were closer to the city, and everybody had antennas on the side of their house. Very few people had cable. It didn't even exist then, I don't think, in that area. It started to in the late 70s, early 80s, but at
Hmm.
that time, so I didn't see Sesame Street unless a babysitter was watching us, and they lived in Mandeville.
And that one, and those antennas, you're talking about the ones where it strings out and then it branches out into two separate T's, and then it has little
Yeah,
fins on
you
each of
had
them.
That's the thing. You don't even know what I'm talking about. No,
I'm referencing from E.T. movie. You know, I'm referencing from 70s
right.
movies.
You may have seen it on movies for sure. On old Flintstone cartoons, they had good replicas of it just in drawings. It was a pole like the size of a handle. You could barely get your hand around it, galvanized metal, and it was next to your house, and it shot straight up just over the roof of your house, and it had a large like T-shaped
Hmm.
thing on top of it that was perpendicular to the ground with multiple small perpendicular things across the main line, and you pointed it at whatever station to get it.
Hmm.
So you'd have people go outside and turn it this way, turn it that way. So it was like a giant rabbit ears on the side of your house rather than just on the
So
top of
I'm sure many a people saw untimely demise from trying to change the channel.
no, there wasn't
No.
electrical at all. You could just turn it. It
No,
was
no,
in the
no, no,
ground.
no. From falling, from like, oh,
Oh,
let me
no, you
reach
could
and
do it standing on the ground. You would put your
okay,
hand on it and just twist the
okay. So it wasn't
galvanized.
on the roof. I thought you were like saying it's like
No, they would go on the roof to assemble it, and put it
okay,
and run the
and then you
cable,
can turn it through.
but you could just be on the ground and turn it the
Gotcha.
direction you needed to, just stand on the ground.
Yeah, man. I mean, to see the next channel, I gotta climb on the roof.
You didn't
Nah.
have to if you lived close enough. We had to where we grew up because you were so far away from the thing. You had to point the antenna receiver directly at the transmitter to
Hmm.
get because the signal was so weak. That's why we had 1.5 channels. But if you lived like in Mandeville, it was 30 miles closer to New Orleans, which was 30 miles away across the lake, their transmitters, you could just leave the antenna up, point it in the general direction, and pick up 4, 6, and 8 and channel 12, which was the public broadcasting system. And you were
Right.
good. You had 4 channels. And that was like the stuff back then. I mean,
Yeah.
having four
Premium.
channel, yes,
Yeah.
that was a big deal. Uh, so, and they had another channel like 26 was like Leave It to Beaver, which you couldn't get unless you were in town because it wasn't putting out nearly as much wattage.
Mhm.
And I didn't see that at all ever. I never saw that channel growing up or even as adult. It may exist now, it may not. It just wasn't that big, but it was just for people in the city who
Right.
could pick it up. But that said, that means we had chores and animals were resources. I had to feed the cows every morning, every evening. So before I went to school, I had to feed the animals. I say cows, but pigs and chickens too. And when I got back from school, I had to feed the animals. And weekends, we had to clean up best we could. And that
Right.
meant we had to weed gardens too if we were growing them. And that wasn't uncommon back in the day in that area. Uh,
Hmm.
so, and we always had dogs, and that was fine. Even
Yeah.
when we lived in Mandeville, we had dogs, and they were great companions. Loved them growing up. Could hang out with them, do different things. Dogs love being around people, so it was really cool. But that said, if it turned out a dog was killing chickens, you know how they get to a certain thing and a certain age when they're not puppies anymore, and if they get used to chickens, they're fine. They don't bother with them. They pay no attention to them whatsoever. But
Right.
sometimes when puberty hits and they're adult dogs, it's instinctive for them to kill a chicken and eat it. I mean, that's if a
Right.
dog is left in the wild, that's like the perfect animal for them to go after and
Yeah.
eat.
Can't hurt them really. It's easy.
Yeah, and it's food. It's food to everything
Yeah.
that eats meat. So it's really tough for a dog to override their instincts and not
Hmm.
kill a chicken unless the dog has been trained not to do it and their instincts don't force them to anyway. And you're like, oh, you could train them. Well, the thing is, this is 1971 or two. The training wasn't the same. You had to be around them all the time, and there was nobody there. We were at school. My parents were both working, and the dog was outside around the chickens all the time. So if they get bored,
Hmm.
that's what they're going to do.
Where was the nearest vet? And that's probably the
Oh,
biggest
the nearest
difference
vet
now.
wasn't too far because there were
Okay.
horse farms all around.
Right. True. Yeah. Your
Yeah.
country area, so you need a
Yeah,
veterinarian for all that
right.
farmage.
But the thing is, if if my father and he bought the chickens to we had eggs, fresh eggs, we had chickens that we had to slaughter, pluck, and that's what we ate when they got too old and didn't lay eggs anymore. Um, he he dispatched the dog. Best way to
Yeah.
say it. If the dog
Right.
ended up killing, that was our livelihood,
Yeah.
and there was nothing, and you
Costing
can't
them money.
stop them. Yeah, here's the thing: you can't stop them from doing it once they've made it clear it's a pattern. Like he wouldn't do it right away. He'd try to train them, get them not to do it, but like people, some animals just will do what they do. And I know
Hmm.
it's horrifying to some people. Oh, they're cruel treatment, but if we didn't have those, if that dog did that, we didn't have anything to eat.
Right. It's
And
us or the dog, you
and
know.
everybody in the area I'm aware of did the same thing.
Hmm.
If your dog went to a neighbor's property and chased their cattle, that dog was going to be no more because he
Hmm.
frightened the cattle. They might create a stampede, run over each other, hurt the calves, destroy the fencing or the barn, hurt themselves. And the people didn't even think about it. They picked up their rifle, they took care of the foreign dog causing havoc with their cattle,
Hmm.
and it didn't happen. And in fact, the other owner was like, I'm sorry if my dog did that. But all dogs, almost no dog was in the house unless it was like a purse dog. Some women had, very few would have a small dogs that they would keep around with them. They wouldn't carry them in their purse typically, but that was just what we taught them.
Right.
Or a lap dog. But, and dogs were outside all the time. All animals were outside. Occasionally you would have people who would allow a cat inside even back then. But most of the time they were outside too. We never had any inside animals, and most people didn't
Hmm.
back then. Now it's uncommon. If people have an animal, it's inside most of the time.
I would probably point out the first culture difference of today than then was, or just in general, is neutering was probably not even an option back. Y'all just didn't even think about it, like neutering the dog, because that probably took down the aggression a
No,
lot.
no. We did neuter the dogs for the same reason. We didn't want to get. We like dogs, and we
So
they
they were still attacking chickens after they were neutered.
yes, yes.
Oh wow.
It's tough to over. Not all of them, just
Hmm.
some of them that we had, and the ones that didn't, they lived lovely long lives. They had a great time. We hung out with them, and
Right.
they're wonderful companions. Dogs are awesome, but if they didn't and they couldn't be stopped and they kept killing chickens or eating
Yeah, I'm
eggs,
sure a lot of people would see that as cruel, but at some point you had to do that even when first making dogs. You had to breed out the bad wolves, you know? You had to breed
well,
out,
yeah, but that was hundreds of thousands of years ago. So
sure, but it's the
but
same extension of like, hey, we have these dogs, we can't have
yeah.
bad ones, and
But
they're
even
gonna run
then,
amok.
even the ones who didn't want to chase chickens, like I don't know if you've ever heard that term. It was common. Like one of the worst things that's an egg sucking dog, meaning it was good for nothing and needed to be dispensed with.
Oh, really? Never
You'll
heard
have
that
some
term.
dogs that will go into a hen's hutch or a pen and just eat the eggs, and then
Hmm.
lick this. You cannot have that because that's what you eat. And some people would sell them. Once you have enough chickens, you sell them, make a little extra money, so you can get even feed the dog. Yeah, and done. So, and we only had, if I can recall, we only had one or two of those in all the dogs we had that I was growing up. But the amazing thing for me is the way you said worship, which surprised me. Like they put them, they almost make them sacred, like put them on a pedestal.
Yeah, a lot
And,
of people do. It's kind of
and
weird.
if that's okay for them, more power
Yeah,
to them. I
right.
don't have an issue with it, but what I do have an issue is if they do that and they treat their pets better than they treat their family and friends. That always weirds me out. I
Yeah,
can't tell you how much that makes me look at them and go, what is wrong with them?
yeah, it's definitely like, okay, you definitely have some weird value system skewed from some probably traumatization in life, or that's what I assume is like, okay, people treated you badly, and the only
Yeah,
time
yeah,
you had,
it makes me think they have some psychological issues or something
yeah,
going on.
like
And
something
I
happened to
could be
them.
wrong, right? But it is very, very strange to me. And
Hmm.
it, it and I've noticed a streak where you have a few people I've met in my life, and you still see them that they treat all animals better than all people and go, well, animals are the only ones that won't betray you and they don't talk back
Yeah.
and they always and I get that, but the thing is they don't talk back because they can't talk back. They don't talk at all.
Right. Well,
And they're
that too. Like you act like dogs are so great. Well, because we bred them to be that great.
correct, correct. But also they also have no choice like you. It's in their DNA now, but
Hmm.
also they're utterly dependent upon you and they're
Right.
scared of everybody else and they've formed an attachment bond with you that's
Hmm.
instinctive and they cannot get away from it. So, and you could be a horrible person, but the dog's not going to know the difference. They're too
Yeah. Incompetent.
foolish and
Yeah.
stupid to know they're not intelligent enough to know if you're a horrible person. You can scream at a dog and he won't like it, but
Hmm.
they're still going to stay there and they're not going to scream back and they're going to come up to you like, I'm sorry, even though you were mad. And then you're going
Hmm.
to feel bad later, but you shouldn't have to. Humans won't tolerate that.
Right.
And, and I've noticed the kind of people who treat all animals better than all people usually are horrible people. Nobody can
Yeah.
stand to be around them. And that's why they think that. So, of course, you're going to prefer to be around animals because a
Hmm.
human being can't stand to be around you any length of time.
Yeah, I've
But that's a
noticed that
small
too.
that's a
There's a
small segment of population.
it is a small segment,
But
but
it's
to
there.
even to even branch off of that, there's a bit of a discrepancy with those type of people where they do value dogs or cats or pets more than humans. Some of them I've noticed kind of treat their animals poorly because I guess because they can't, and that's why they do value the dog more or the cat is because they can't get away with that with a human. So
Yeah,
they,
that's what I meant. Like they
yeah,
still don't treat their animals too well.
that's not all of them, and I think that's a very
Right.
few of them that do
But
that. But I've
but
noticed that with a couple of them.
yeah, they're just, not all of them. Some of them are just really genuine and sensitive people, and animals get them, and they get
Hmm.
animals too.
Right.
And humans are just too harsh for them. And so I get that. I understand that completely.
Yeah.
But still, there are those people that they're just not cool people, and they can't
Hmm.
stand being around humans because humans won't tolerate them.
Hmm.
And then they have to be animals are their only companion. So,
Hmm.
but what I was saying, over the years, I've seen animals go from being tools and resources to be,
Hmm.
like you put it, like worshipped. They're
Yeah.
like
There's
lesser
definitely
gods or demigods. I'm like, there's probably a happy medium because honestly, when
probably
I
indeed.
yeah, when I was a kid, if the animal didn't suit its purpose, you sold it or ate it,
Hmm.
or got rid of it in some
Hmm.
form or fact, but you did not tolerate it. It was eating up food or destroying your property or taking up space or costing you money in some way, and you could not, it was gone. There was just, and nobody thought anything of it. That's simply the way it was. Now I know some of that was due to the fact that I lived on a farm, and that's what you
Right.
do with animals. However, it how it was done back then would not be tolerated now at all. And back then everybody did it the same way. It was not
Yeah.
unusual. And we
There's
had a oh, go ahead.
I said there's a lot of good as well that's come with this radical change of animal value because first and foremost, people have become a lot more knowledgeable on how animals behave and how to train animals. I've noticed that
Yes.
people are a lot more knowledgeable on how to interact with animals and to get them to do things
Yes.
without necessarily having to beat them. You know that they figured out like, oh, I can train it by feeding it treats and then giving it encouragement and
Right.
showing it the
And
right
people
thing.
did that back then too.
Yeah, I'm sure they did. It just wasn't
Yeah.
nearly as commonplace, I'm sure.
Right, right. But it was just the way you just looked at animals completely. Like I said, I know some of it was a farm, but even then, when I would go see relatives in the city or the town, and I'd look at them, nobody would walk around with their dog in a park, except every one or two. And every time you saw one, it was unusual. Now everybody's in a park with their dog on a leash. And some people even take them off leash and get angry with you if you say something because
Yeah,
it's against the law almost everywhere to not have your dog leashed in a park because
yeah.
animals are animals and you don't know what they're going to do and you don't know what's going to set them off. And everybody knew that back then. So if you were going to take your dog out of your house, it was leashed all the time.
Hmm.
And if it did anything that would endanger another person, shame on it, is all I have to say.
Yeah, I mean
Now it's just
that's
the
another
opposite.
problem.
Like if it has to do
No,
something, it's the person's fault that the dog did
yeah,
something, which
yeah,
is
no, it's
crazy to me.
and to give you a little bit of experience with that is, I walk around a lot in neighborhoods for my job, and I have, small cul-de-sac areas where it's an in meeting. There's not much traffic. Well, people think, well, I can just leave my dog in the front yard, even though it's a suburb. And like it's a big dog. It's not like it's a overly friendly dog.
Hmm.
This dog's. I'm walking down the sidewalk, and this dog is showing aggressive traits, like
Hmm.
barking at me, raising its
Hmm.
fur, getting
Hmm.
closer, trying to slink around me to get to my flank so I can't see what it's doing and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
it's hunting you.
Yeah, it's hunting me, and it's barking, making a lot of noise, and I'm like, hey, get back, get back. And the owner comes out, and I'm like, hey, man, why do you have your dog out in a suburb? And they're like, and they look at me like they did not, like, why
It's
am
like
I
you're the
bothering
problem,
them? Yeah, and it's
right?
like, man, I could be a kid, and this dog's hunting me, and I'm 6'5". I'm not a small guy. So if this dog's showing aggression towards me, what is it going to do to a kid?
Right,
This could
right.
have gone a lot worse.
Well, I'll tell you, in 1969, 70, 71, what would have happened? The police would have been called, they would have dispatched, they would have shown up, and if the dog was aggressive at all, they would have shot it right there.
Right.
I know that for a fact. And if everybody says, "Oh, there's no way," I'm telling you, I have watched it happen, and I was a
Yeah.
little bit older than that, and I have stories of other people telling me that's exactly what happened. The local police would show up and destroy it right there if there was an aggressive dog.
Hmm.
Now they dispatch animal shelters or anything else like that. But even
Hmm.
now, in some small rural areas, you still might have that. Some of the older ones, but there would be no, and everybody would say, "What a great job the officer did." Because he put himself, I'm telling you, he would be, there'd be a small little ceremony, a ribbon would be handed out.
I don't know if a ceremony is
I'm
necessary, but
telling you, because a large dog growling and nipping at people is
yeah,
a, I mean, like you said, that could kill a little kid or even maim an
yeah.
adult,
Hmm.
or even worse. But I'm saying, if they fought it off, but even if they couldn't, so the officer showing up and doing that, and I know people would be horrified now,
Hmm.
and that's what I'm saying. I know I trigger, but that would happen almost everywhere I knew of, and not just because I'm in the South, and not just because I'm in a rural area. I'm telling you, it was a
Right.
common thing.
And it still happens today. You still see like videos of some, an officer looking at a house, and the owner opens the door and the dog comes out aggressively and attacks the officer. Well, the officer,
Well,
dispatches the dog, and that's the situation.
right,
And
right,
he gets a lot
and
of
that's to
flack
be
for it,
and that's to
but
be expected. I mean, he's
hmm
defending his life because you don't know what that. I mean,
right.
the dog's already shown what it's going to do. It's not your
Hmm.
friend, and it's got a potentially deadly weapon it's using right now.
Hmm.
So it has to do something. I mean, the
Hmm.
officer, you have to defend yourself. My thing is, they do it okay with the officer, which is fine. But if it's a normal person that does the same thing, that
Oh,
person is crucified,
yeah, that person's going to jail, and
and
they're going to
and
figure it out from
and
there.
it shouldn't be
No,
because they're defending themselves too, and they have a right to be there, or at least
right.
knock on the door. If the owner didn't was understandable about what was going on, they wouldn't
Hmm.
open the door because the dogs are going crazy. Owners say, "Go away," my dog's going crazy, and then but it's really weird. Like I said, the entire complexion of how it's viewed and how we view our pets and animals has gone in an almost opposite direction. And I'm glad it's kinder now to the animals than it used to be. That's for
Yeah,
sure. Because I'm telling you, cats are always like a half step from going feral.
yeah.
And some cats are just,
Vermin, essentially, is what
yeah,
they look like.
they'll just wander off one day and you won't see them again. And you did everything perfect as a cat owner. And you think like, well, sometimes they want to go out. They're cats. They want to go outside. They want to be in the grass. They want to chase crickets. They want to catch mice and small animals and things like that. And that's the other thing. A cat will anything smaller than itself that it think it can
Oh
kill
yeah,
without being hurt. It's going to do it. That's what
yeah,
cats do, and they
yeah.
want to do that.
There was some statistic where like majority of birds are going extinct in America
It's because
because
of all
of
the cats
cats.
we have now, right? Because
Yeah.
there are a lot more cats now than when I was a kid. People just didn't have it because cat. It was known by people back then that cats didn't really like you. Most of them, they tolerated you,
Hmm.
and of course you have some do, like Erica's cat. Your
Hmm.
sister. He is like a dog. He loves being around people, wants to be petted, wants to go outside. Doesn't, but he's a rare cat. And I've seen several cats like that throughout my
Hmm.
life, but most of them, they're not.
Hmm.
They barely tolerate you only because you feed them and you let them sleep somewhere safe. Um,
Yeah, I think the cat culture has exploded, and I don't
yes,
know. I don't
and it has
understand it.
gone crazy.
I know we're both dog people. If any animal, we're dog people for sure. But like,
Right. I blame it on toxoplasmosis, to be honest with you.
you're in that conspiracy.
Oh yeah, it's not a conspiracy. It's a proven scientific thing.
It
You
is
can
proven, but like, I
yes,
think they
and
have to have
it
certain.
shows that even mice and rats will go smell cat urine and lay in it because they want to be close to them, and they will run toward cats like, "Hey, buddy, how's it going?" And I think it happens, and it really and it they've shown
Mhm.
it changes your brain structure, and I think it happens. It happens with all mammals, and
Yeah.
certainly humans are mammals. And since we've had more cats, that's what happened. And it's a virus, and you can't see it. It just happens. And it's happened to 80% of the people who own cats have proven they have the virus in their system. So
Yeah.
Yes, I'm on
And
the
for the people at
bandwagon.
home listening to this, to give them a little bit of information, toxoplasmosis results from infection with a common parasite found in cat feces and contaminated food. It can cause serious complications for pregnant women and people with weakened immune systems. Symptoms include muscle pain, fever, and headache, and all of which can last for weeks. But also has symptoms of causing the person to be infected and become submissive to the cat is one of
Yes.
the
And I
main
think that
roles.
is definitely the case. And like I said, that I don't know if it was that article, but another over 80% of the people who have cats living with them have toxoplasmosis. They're infected with that parasite. I thought it was a
Yeah.
virus. It might be a virus they get from parasite, but I could be mistaken. And it changes the way you think. It changes your brain structure and the way you perceive your cat. In fact, it makes you a crazy cat lady in some capacity. Now, some people
Yeah.
are going to be more susceptible to others, and of course, the more cats you have, the more likely you are to have it.
I think it also depends on how clean you keep your house. If
It,
you're not exposed to it too
it
much.
doesn't matter. Now, they didn't have it when I was a kid because even if you had cats, they weren't allowed inside. They were
Hmm.
outside. All
True.
cats were outside cats. They fed them outside. You spent time with them outside. You might have a favorite cat that was well behaved you let inside because people knew back then if the cat didn't like you, you fed it a food it didn't like or it was uncomfortable, it would start peeing on your stuff. Like your mom had a cat when we moved in together that hated me.
Which is
And
interesting because she's allergic to cats. So I'm not sure.
she is now. She
Hmm.
wasn't then.
Gotcha.
And it was a long-haired black cat. I liked it. He was okay, except he hated me. And then after he displayed his hatred and attacked me a few times, and we had just done laundry, and he identified my clothes. Most of my clothes were in there because I'd just come back from work and they were sweaty and full. So I just washed mine, and he knew they were just mine, and he urinated all over them, a heavy spray, and you could smell it a couple of
Hmm.
rooms away. And I'm like, son of a gun. And your mom started laughing like, he doesn't like you. I'm like, well, I know that, but I didn't know it was that bad. And I had to wash him again 3 more times because that urine smell would not come out
Oh
on the
yeah,
front.
that
It
stuff's
was
pungent,
horrible.
man.
And it took a
Yeah.
while for that
Hmm.
to come out. But then he defecated on my pillow
Hmm.
the next day to let me know exactly what because he could smell where I slept on that. He knew where I slept on that pillow, and he just defecated right there and left a nice little chocolate ice cream cone top on it. And I'm
Hmm.
like, uh-huh. Had to
Hmm.
clean that up. And it's like, all right, just you stay out of my way, I stay out of yours. We know we don't like each other. I wasn't pleased about it, but what are you gonna do?
Hmm.
Well, then he started pouncing on me with genuine fury and hatred and puncturing my skin
Hmm.
whenever I was seated or if I was walking by and he was in a corner, he would jump on me and literally sink his teeth into me.
Mm.
And here's the thing, I had never, and I know people are going to argue, but I'm telling you the truth, never done anything negative to that cat up to that point,
It could probably
ever.
feel your hatred towards it.
I did not have any hatred for it. It was fine. I would pet it every once in a while. It was to me, it was like if you're here, great. If you're not, that's fine too. I had zero feelings about it. I'm not a super cat person, but I don't hate them. In fact, some
Hmm.
cats, I like some cats, but
Yeah.
this cat, I thought he was okay. I'd pet him, I'd feed him every once in a while, but as time went on, I did not like him because
Hmm.
he treated me in a horrible way. Like it's an innocent animal. One thing, it's not innocent. It did these things on purpose to make my life miserable and let me know what it thought of me. There goes
Yeah.
the innocence thing. Even if it's just a sub-intelligent cat, it did what it did. So one day while walking by a coffee table, we had a double-decker coffee table with a bottom platform where you could put magazines and stuff and a top tabletop. Well, it was hiding under the double platform, and it was summertime, and I happened to be walking.
Waiting to get you.
Yes, through the living room, and it lashed out, clawed the back of my Achilles tendon, pulled
Mm.
itself out, and sunk its fangs into my Achilles tendon on my right foot.
I couldn't help but stomp it. I know that sounds terrible. That'd be
Well,
reaction. That'd be my react. Like, oh,
that's
this thing attacked me.
exactly what happened. But when I
Yeah.
realized it and I felt it, I knew what it was. So I didn't stomp, but I
Okay.
put my foot down on it and eased my weight down on it to stop it from attacking me. And because it at that point, its shoulder and spine was under my foot because I just twisted my ankle and foot
Hmm.
and applied pressure. And it just stopped. It froze because it could feel my weight and it was freaked out. And I had
Hmm.
pinned it down. And I'm like, all right, now what do I do? Because if I let go, it's going to be a ball of screaming fury running up my leg and chomping everything. If I don't let go, or if I apply more pressure, it's going to hurt this cat. So I'm
Yeah.
like, I stood there for about 2 minutes with just my weight, and I just eased a little bit more. I was like, okay, what I'm going to do is freak the cat out a little bit, not harm it, but like a
Mhm.
squeeze, and say, all right, cat, stop it, stop
Right.
messing with me, and we'll leave each other alone. Well, it started it, it started making weird noises. Yeah,
That was
worse,
that noise.
worse, worse, because I guess I had put a little too much pressure on its airway, so I shifted so it could do that. Then it started shrieking. Well, now it freaked me out. It started, I mean, shrieking, like screaming like I've never heard it scream
Yeah,
before. So
they
it
can
was
get
scared
loud.
out. Yeah, so it was scared out of its mind, and I had never heard that from a cat
Yeah, well, yeah,
before.
I'm sure it's never been in that situation before. I think
Right.
it's
And I was like, all right, now how do I get off of this cat? Because if I do and it's scared, there's no telling what it would do.
yeah.
So finally I just started easing up a little bit to let it calm down. And I could hear it panting and feel it
Uh-huh.
panting very, very, very quickly. And it
Yeah, it was
finally
freaking
just,
out.
yeah, and it finally just urinated and defecated everywhere,
Oh man,
right
you
there
really
on
scared that
me
thing.
and all over under the coffee table and everything, just everything. And I finally was like, all right, I'm out. And the whole thing lasted, like I said, about 2.5 minutes total, probably two and a half
Right.
minutes. The time it jumped on me to figure. Well, after I left, it just laid there and it did what it did. And I'm like, I got all that stuff to clean up.
Clean
And I,
up. Yeah.
yeah, so I went to go do it. Your mother was at work, and so there was just me and that cat. And finally, I went to go look for the cleaning solution, mop, paper towels, towel. And I knew it was going to be. When I went back, cat was gone.
Mhm.
So I'm like, all right, it's hiding somewhere. It's okay. That's good. There was no blood. I didn't break anything,
Mhm.
and it took me forever to clean it up. Multiple disinfectants and deodorants and things and wipe it up. Next time I saw that cat, whenever I saw that cat, it was running away. It was,
Oh, that's a shame.
yeah, it was
That's
running away.
that's the thing. You don't know how it's going to react to that because they
Right.
are very vengeful creatures. I don't
It
know if
Well,
dominance
that's
really
what I
works on them.
noticed. But here's the thing. That was what, in 1988, nine, something like that.
Mhm.
And I told people that story, like, man, I would have killed that cat if it did all that stuff you're telling me. And I didn't want to kill the cat. I
Mhm.
really didn't want to kill the cat.
Mhm.
But it hated my guts until I scared it out of its mind, and then it left me alone, right?
Mhm.
Um, and the funny thing was, I would pick up its litter box, I would feed it, like I said, I never did anything negative or abusive to that cat. That was the crazy. It just decided it hated me. Now, people knew at that time, and people still do now, if they're honest with themselves. Some cats are just that way. Like some
Yeah.
people are just that way. Cat was like, it was jealous. Your mom thought it was jealous of me, in some way, and it hated me because it'd spend time. Now, I guess she spent some time with it, but it couldn't have been that much. And I told her about it, and she wasn't really upset with me, other than she hoped the cat was okay, because
Mhm.
she saw it attacking me a few times, and I
Right.
would get away, or I would drop a pillow on it sometimes if it was attacking me, just to get it off, or just something like that without hurting the cat. So that would happen. But nowadays, I don't know what would happen if that occurred. I've seen a
Uh,
grown woman put a cat in a baby carriage and put mosquito netting over it to take it for a walk, take its baby for a walk. That
yeah.
freaked me out.
Yeah.
Uh,
That's to me that's psycho. That's I can't. There's
yeah,
no other word for that. Like you have issues. You have value issues. You have some weird.
not just that, and like I said, if that's what makes her happy, you do
No,
you.
you have
I have
some
no
weird
issue.
affiliation issue. You're affiliating a cat to a baby. Like that's weird, bro.
Well,
That's not a baby.
and I'm just thinking that was the easiest way for her to carry. And I found out later she had no kids, so she got the baby carrier
Mm,
just for the cat, the baby carriage. It was wheels. It was a carriage like you put a baby in to take outside and get
mm-hmm.
sunlight and to walk in the park. And she put it in with some mosquito netting over it. It was
Mm-hmm.
that kind of thing. Um, but I saw that one, and I've heard of others doing similar things.
Mm-hmm.
Just says, like, oh, my cat's never outside. My cat's never. I'm like, that's a cat. Do you know what you're doing to that cat's mental state? But if it's okay and you're happy, okay, I guess. But my
Right.
point is, now to do anything, harmful to an animal is a straight up felony. And I'm not saying it shouldn't be. It probably should.
Yeah, more
It's
often
not
than not,
about,
it should be.
yeah,
Yeah.
cruelty to animals, felony. Okay, I'm with you.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing of it is to place them on a pedestal greater than humans, or even with me, even equal to. I don't agree with that. I know vegans and vegetarians are going to be hating on me, but they're
Yeah.
not. They're animals. They should be protected, respected, treated well. They're great companions, but they also serve a purpose. And if they're destructive or they're causing injury and harm, they need to be dealt with as an
Yeah.
animal. Uh, You know that that simple. But I have, like I said, I've seen it go from one swing of the pendulum to the other side,
Hmm.
and I'm kind of like, what's going on? Um,
Yeah, there's definitely I mean with one of my friends, he had two dogs for a while and then he had to get a kid and one of the dogs wasn't meshing with the kid. It was too, it wasn't dealing well with the kid. He had to get rid of the dog. And I think a lot of people that's a very hard choice for them to get rid of the dog. I don't think a lot of people would get rid of the dog. I don't think they get rid of the baby either, but I think they'd figure
I
out some way to have it. I think they would like try to, you know, they would try to twist their brain some way to make it to where it's worth having this dog and the kid because I can't get rid of the dog because it's part of the family as well. You know
That
what I mean?
blows my mind that you'd even consider to
Hmm.
keep your child in danger if the dog hates your kid,
Yeah, and I'm
because
not saying this is, an average person that does
it doesn't
this,
matter. It
but
doesn't
some
matter. It's
people
just
for sure.
how animals are looked at these days.
Hmm.
And it may not be an uncommon thing. And like I said, animals should be loved and respected and treated well whenever possible, but they're still animals,
Hmm.
regardless of the role that people. And here's the other thing: if you love your little foo-foo, that's wonderful, but don't expect me to treat it like a member of my family. It's a dog. It. I know I've been around them my entire life, and every dog I've ever seen loves horse manure, will eat it by the bucket loads. They treat it like ambrosia. It's pumpkin pie and apple cobbler like people eat. They love it and will eat it, throw it up, and eat it again. And I know people will say, "Oh no, my dog." If your dog gets around fresh horse manure, freshly dropped, they will eat it like they've never seen anything so lovely before. And they can't help it. It's a dog. That's what they do. That's what they're
I mean,
supposed to do.
they
And
eat
then
their
they'll
own
roll in
poo.
it. Yes, they eat their own. They're animals, and they will roll in it.
They're
If they
scavengers at the end of
correct
the day.
yes, if they weren't for human beings, they would never see the inside of a house. No dog anywhere ever has built a house.
Right.
They have dug a den if they wanted to. If they wanted to, and get out of some sort of shelter. They have a hole in the ground for when it's really cold. But if it's not, they're sleeping under trees and bushes because they're animals. Same way with cats. Cats don't even stay in regular houses unless you make them. Um,
Right.
and many
And
dogs don't like to be in houses.
no.
A lot of them would rather be outside, and that's fine too. They have hair or fur, actually, two layers of it on them for a reason, and they're fine with it.
Yeah, I think the biggest, yeah, the most common ones are Great Pyrenees and Huskies. Hate being inside house. They hate
Yeah,
being inside
they're
the house.
outside dogs. They're outside work dogs, and
Right.
they love being outside, especially
Hmm.
when it's cold. Like if you're cold, your dog's cold. I promise you that is not the case most
Right.
of the time.
Yeah. They have a
Your
layer of
dog,
fur, man. I mean,
two layers. They have an
right.
inside layer and an outside layer.
Right. Yeah, those
So
dogs in particular have an underfur, a winter coat, and an underfur. It's like they
right,
have a lot going for them for insulation.
they'd
They're
rather
fine.
be outside. They're finally comfortable after
Hmm.
after panning like crazy and sweating through their paws for 10 months out of the year. They're finally comfortable, and people lose sight of that. They see them and they're like, oh, they're one in the family. And that to me is a little bit offensive, being a boomer X guy. No, they are not family. They are a family pet, and I will take care of them, make sure no harm comes to them, but they are a pet. They are not my blood. They will not be treated better than my kids or other members of my family
Hmm.
because they're an animal. So, that
And I'm
and I
I'm right. I'm right to where it's like they're just below human value to me. They're just below. Like if people come over and we're having a gathering, and if the dog is causing an issue, or if I assume the dog's going to cause an issue, the dog's gonna go in one of the rooms and be away from everybody for, you know what I mean? It's not gonna be a part of the family gathering. It's just not. It's just how it's gonna be. It's gonna be
It's
isolated into its own little
well,
area.
because you're saying it's decided that it's disruptive and it can't be a part of that. It's making that
Even if
decision
somebody
on its
just
own.
if I'm inviting people over and they just don't want the dog there, I'm not gonna just have them, or well, you just can't be here because the dog's, I'm just gonna be,
Oh yeah, that's another thing that's common. Well, the dog
yeah,
lives here, you don't. I'm like, but you invited me over here,
right.
and I don't
Yeah.
mesh
If
well
you're
with
not comfortable with the
dogs.
dog, then we're gonna put the dog away for a bit. It is what it
Yeah,
is.
and that's to me, that's the appropriate thing.
Hmm.
But most people nowadays, no, that's not it. That's your
Yeah.
problem. You can leave, and you have no idea. And that to me is crazy stuff.
Hmm.
But I don't get it. I don't understand it. I never will understand it. I didn't grow up that way, and I try to rationalize it. Like I said, we all have a responsibility to our pets and animals. Um, but there is a line to me that you do not cross with respect to how you treat them in relation to other human beings, especially those human beings that are your friends and family, and invite them over to the house.
Yeah, that's really, really straining on my view on trying to be compassionate for them and how they view things,
Right.
because that's a line I cannot get behind. I just can't see their viewpoint on it. Like,
But even then, even
what are you
if
trying to
not,
do here?
I had a woman, we were living in the old house, and they were looking for their dog that got out of the house and was wandering around. And if I would have seen it, most dogs are pretty nice. In fact, here's the thing: dogs love me. I've never met even dogs that would eat other people and hate. When they see me, I'm like, that I look at them and I'm, hey, and they see me and their tail starts wagging, their tongue lolls out like, hey, buddy, where you been? Like they've known
Hmm.
me. I don't know what it is. That's fine because I like dogs, but all dogs love me. Giant Rottweilers that slobber at the mouth and try to eat everybody when they see me, they want to be my friend. It just, and I do nothing but just stand there and look at them. But that's just the way it is. And that's good because I'd rather that happen than the
Right,
alternative,
right,
So I don't have an
for
issue with
sure.
it. Even dogs that are come barking and tearing at the fence, if it's a chain link fence trying to get at me, once you open the gate and I'm standing there looking at them, then they're my friend. All of a sudden, they
Hmm.
want to be my buddy, no matter how dangerous they appeared just 5 seconds ago. So this woman comes around. She goes, have you seen my dog? And I'm like, I haven't seen any dogs, but what does it look like? So if I see it, I'll give you a call. And she goes, oh, I happen to have a picture of my baby here. And before she showed me the picture, I'm like, I thought you were looking for your dog. And it was an honest question. And she was offended. Now
Hmm.
remember, this was, 20 years ago, but still, and she was definitely offended and didn't know what to say. She immediately, I could tell she wanted to say something snappy back to me, like I was being, but she knew, she could see I was not trying to be sarcastic. I wasn't trying to put her down. I was like, I thought you were looking for, that was a genuine, you said
Hmm.
baby, I'm thinking baby, but you're
Hmm.
thinking dog. They are not remotely close to the same thing to me. And
Yeah.
then I started laughing. I was like, "Oh, you meant your dog." Well, yeah, let's show me a picture. So if I see it, I'll let you know and I'll catch it,
Mm.
bring it in. So everything. She goes, "Okay, I appreciate it." And she didn't say anything. Showed me the picture, some black and white, um, shepherd of some sort. And then that was it. I never did see the dog. But the thing
Right.
is that I didn't know what she meant by it. Now it's a common term,
Oh
and I'm
yeah.
and
You
I'm
know
here
what's
to
even
say,
worse? I'll give you an evolution of that. Now in the dating scene, there is a common footnote for these women, and they say "dog mom," as in they're yes, they're a mother to dog.
yeah, man.
Yes,
That's that equivalency that I have a tough time with in my age group. And
that's a red flag
Kimnita,
for me. Immediately,
yeah,
it's a red flag for me.
that's a good one. Kimnita, my fiance, she has a dog, and he is a really cool dog. You've met
Hmm.
him,
Yeah.
Leo, and she's that way. She goes mommy
Hmm.
in reference to him and things like that.
Hmm.
But you see, she's my age, so I know she loves a dog. I love him too. He's a cool dog, but I love him as a dog. He will never be a stepson to me in
Right.
any
I think
capacity.
she's mostly taking the piss when she says that, though.
Yeah, she's joking, but
She's
she
really,
also
yeah.
definitely loves a dog. Like when he finally passed, because he's old for a large dog. He weighs 120 pounds. He's almost 11 years old. That's old for his
Hmm.
age, for his size. She's going to have a hard time. and I understand that, and I'm going to try to try to make her feel better. But again, he's not my stepson. I'm
Right.
not a dog father at all in any
Right.
way, shape, or form. Uh,
Yeah, for sure. That's when they have dog mom. I haven't seen cat mom though. I think it's just
oh, I've seen it.
you've
Seen it.
seen cat mom. I haven't seen that
Facebook.
used the same way
Facebook.
as
That
dog
is a
mom.
big red flag if you're
Yeah.
a male. I'll tell you what a larger red flag. If you're a female and you see some guy who worships his dog, he is
Yeah.
not looking at the world in a logical fashion that can function with humans as a male, as a man that you're going to expect if you want a companion as a man and a man be a man in the classic traditional sense. I'm telling you
Right.
right now, ladies, if you see that, look at that long and hard and make
Yeah.
your decision. No matter what you think about it, unless it meshes with the way you view the world, then
It
fine.
does. It does.
Yeah,
It's I think it's a lot of those dog moms and dad dog dads. I don't know how. I've never seen that, but also don't look at men's profiles, so maybe that is a thing for them. But and
I've
maybe
seen
those two
younger
get together.
I've seen younger hipster guys with skinny jeans and too tight blazers, penny loafers without socks,
There it
half
is.
long and half short hair, a scraggly beard with horn rimmed glasses, drinking an $8 coffee with a dog dad shirt on in the
Nice.
downtown city. Yeah, he was like, I don't know if you could fit another cliche on your person, sir.
Right. Well, he'd have to be toting a vinyl cop collection with him as well, and have
But so I know they exist because he was there.
and a
Now I don't
three-seater
know,
bite.
right? I don't know if he was doing that just to try to attract a certain kind of lady because it was a pretty day and we were
Maybe.
out there, and he might have because he knew it was like I said downtown. A lot of people are out and about, so he might have been. But still, that's what he wanted to display. He wanted you to know that's what he was about,
Oh yeah.
and he had one of those little half poodle, half something dogs. I don't know what it was, a putsu or
Mhm.
a puwawa
Mhm.
or something.
Yeah.
But you know what I
Some
mean?
city dog.
On
Yeah.
a leash, yeah, because we were in downtown city, and yeah, if that's your thing, knock yourself out. But I'm here to tell you, he's definitely not your traditional American male thing. Like I say, if you're not expecting that, lovely. He's exactly what you're looking for. But if you're getting that thinking you're going to turn him into that and he's still a man in a traditional sense, no. He is so far away from that, you can't even have an
Uh
idea what he's thinking.
yeah. It's not to say that there's not exceptions in those roles, but I have not met a single dude who does have that value system for their animal or companion as a pet, and I've not met them ever to really fit that role of traditional male. Like I've never met them know how
Yeah.
to do anything
And I'm not saying
around the
that,
house
yeah,
or
yeah.
just the
And I'm
basics.
not saying the traditional male is necessarily a good thing. I'm saying we
Hmm.
all know what that's about, and
Right.
that guy's not about that.
Right.
So you're not going to have that kind of thing. But that kind of and the reason I mention it that way is it seems like how we should feel about things, meaning we as a society, has taken we're being forced to accept feminine and childish views of animals, and you can't
Yeah.
have a man's dispassionate utilitarian view of animals is not acceptable at all anymore. You're considered a monster, and you can still be utilitarian and compassionate. You should be compassionate to them, but
Hmm.
animals should not be ruling your life unless you're, of
Yeah.
course, and that's another thing. Doggy daycare blows my mind.
And that's one that's controversial. I knew it was going to be between us because I get it for a lot of people because people go on vacation and they need somewhere, and
But
not everybody can
that
watch their dog.
is a kennel place. That's not doggy daycare. That's somewhere people drop off their dog when they go to work every day, like you do with your kids.
Hmm.
That blows my mind.
Yeah, that does blow my mind too. That one blows my mind.
And they
It's
charge as if it were your kids too.
yeah,
Hundreds of bucks a week
yeah.
to drop your dog off. It's a dog. He's going to be in a pen with a bunch of other dogs running around, pooping everywhere, slobbering on each other. That's what they do. That's fine. But you're paying hundreds of dollars a week to
Hmm.
have someone watch your dog. I don't get it. I doubt there's daycare, but there could be maybe. Um,
Oh, I'm sure. Cats are so popular now. I cannot.
yeah,
fathom them not having
I
some
mean, they
type
would do
of.
both, and dogs want to be around their people, so and they like companionship. They're pack animals, so I get that you do that as a treat, maybe, or
Mhm.
if you have a friend that can watch your dog, you drop them off. But to do that much, I would say if you think that's necessary, which is why I don't have a dog now because I don't want to leave it by itself, and I don't want to have to worry about somebody to take care of it, so I won't have one. I won't
Right.
have, even though I like them. I won't have one because I'm a responsible pet owner, and I'm not going to mistreat my dog by having to be lonely all the time, worried about what they're going to do, make sure they have food and water all the time. I can't go on a trip without having to kennel them and kennel them. Dogs hate being in a kennel because they're scared of everything new. I'm just not going to do it. So I don't have a dog. But if you're
Right.
doing that, and like I said, if you want to do that and bring them to doggy daycare, that's fine. But if you would have said to anybody in 1975, I'm going to start a daycare for dogs, they would have laughed you out of existence.
Yeah.
Would not happen.
Well, I know there's a
And you would
famous,
starve.
because the culture for dogs is a lot different in China. I know there's a famous Chinese doggy daycare, and it's actually huge. It's some rich guy who made like a
Oh, I'm
huge
sure it's going to be
huge
people with
palace for them, and like they
more
have their
money
own
than.
swimming pool and stuff. It's insane. It looks insane, but it's a lot of clashing in that society because they don't view dogs we do the same way we do in Western society. Like
Right.
they're still in like the 80s and 70s about how dogs should be treated. So,
Well, I
or
mean, you're
even
thinking,
in
look at all
some
those.
cases they're even worse because they eat them for a ritual or tradition or something. They in
Yeah,
some of the
some
cases
parts,
of
if you're
China.
still hungry, it's
Yeah.
acceptable, rather than
Hmm.
go hungry. Which, and that's the other thing. The United States, people will go on murderous, vengeful streaks if they thought somebody ate their dog because they were starving. They
Yeah,
would lose their minds.
that would be to the same. They would equate that to eating a human alive.
Yeah, which to me that's a cognitive disconnect. There's something
Yeah.
wrong with your mind if you really believe that to be the case. And again, I'm not advocating this at all. I'm just
Right.
saying that to equate that, there's something wrong with you.
There's definitely a correlation though, with the psychopaths of, common dog abuse and cat and animal
I'm
abuse,
sure,
and they
and
start
they've shown that
evolving
if
that to human.
everybody who was a serial killer abused and killed animals when they were kids, but here's the
Hmm.
thing: everybody who abuses animal and their kids doesn't turn into a serial killer.
That's true too.
So
Yeah.
that's just a symptom. That's just a one of the red flags on the way. Is like, okay, they did that, but how? Why did they do that? How did they think about that? How often did they do that? Was it a
Right.
continuous thing? Do they still do that?
Hmm.
There's all kind of things that, and there's other factors that go with it. And again, I'm not advocating animal abuse. Quite the opposite. I'm just saying how the society views animals now is radically different than how society viewed animals then,
Hmm.
and especially how people views pets now, very different. But if you eat steak, hamburger, fried chicken, you really don't have anything to say about how people use animals for their own benefit, as far as
Yeah,
I'm concerned.
I think that's where it's coming to as well, as people are starting to see, cows and horses are smarter in some cases than
They
a lot of
are,
dogs and
they
cats.
are. I had a calf as a pet, treated like a dog, and a pig that was smarter than a dog. It would turn on the water
Oh yeah,
faucet to get
pigs are
water.
really
Yeah.
smart.
And that was the first time I had a really hard time. I was 9 years old and I had the original name of Porky, I know. But it would it would follow me around, and that was like my buddy, man. I would pet its coarse hair and pat it on the back, and it would follow me around. We'd hang out. And it was much smarter than a dog. Much smarter than a dog.
Yeah.
And then one day, Dad and a friend of his was loading Porky on the back of a truck up a
Mm,
ramp, and Porky
mm-hmm.
did not want to go. It was squealing and fighting, but they had ropes on it and come-alongs, and they were cranking it. Porky was going. It had no choice. And I'm like, what's going on? And nobody would talk to me. I was the kid getting away. Like, get out, you're in the way. You do this. They blowed it up, and a few days later, we got ham, pork chops, loin, front shoulders, Boston butt, all kind of stuff, bacon, sausage. What's this? Uh, and my dad just tell me, he's old school. He's from the silent generation, old school before his. That's the pig that was your friend. And he didn't say I'm sorry, nothing. Just I go, I can't eat that. And I remember my stomach rolling like I was going to throw up. And he's like, you'll get hungry. Because that's what we were eating. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what we were eating over the next few months with
Right.
the garden stuff that we preserved or grew or had. And it took me 2 weeks. I was hungry. I lost weight, 9 years
Mhm.
old. And he's right, in 2 weeks, I ate bacon,
Mhm.
and I was forced to deal with that reality as a 9-year-old kid. Nowadays, they would probably arrest him for child cruelty and
Oh
animal
man.
cruelty. It's just no way. But that was a common thing. Like I was the problem because I had to live up to the realities of life. And yeah, that's what I'm saying. Now they would say that it was mental torture for me. They'd have me in therapy. They'd have him in therapy. They'd
Yeah.
it would be nuts. You
Yeah, I
know.
think that's where a big disconnect comes from is to even that even though that's never happened to me, of course, because we didn't grow up on a farm, was if that happened to me now, I would still be like, that was weird. But was it cruelty to me? No, because it's reality. That's
That's
this is
just the
what how
life. That
yeah,
was the
that's how
life.
it was. That's
Yeah,
how things are.
in
You know, there's
1975.
no choice. Like that's what we're eating. That's what we have
Yeah,
to eat.
right.
We're not trying to be cruel to you. I'm not intentionally
Yeah,
trying to,
and he
you know.
never explained that to me.
Hmm.
That's just not what you did with kids back then. It was like I said, it was 1975. That was how we got our meat. And when we slaughtered a bull later,
Hmm.
saying,
You
and I
stopped.
used to feed it.
Did you become detached to them? Did you like,
Oh yeah,
I
you
can't name
realize
this one?
these are animals, and that's
Yeah.
when it put it firmly in my mind. These are animals.
Hmm.
You know, that was it. But
I
yeah.
think the even more psychopathic ritual would have been if you would have kept companioning them, knowing the eventual
Oh
result
yeah,
would
giving
be.
them names, probably, and like, oh, and
Yeah.
I,
Well, see ya.
yeah,
Oof.
yeah, better you than me. No, I
Yeah, that'd have been okay. We need to
no,
start looking at this child.
no,
He's
yeah.
got some
After
issues.
that, I didn't spend much time with animals at all, except for the
Yeah.
dogs, and then even then, not too much,
Mm.
because after you have to dispatch them after they're killing your chickens or
Hmm.
eating eggs or chasing down your neighbor's cattle or horses, and they're worth much more money than, especially the
Oh yeah.
horses. They were jumping horses, much more. They were worth much more money than your whole
Especially country
net
dogs.
worth.
People breed them
Yeah,
everywhere. They're trying to give them away. They don't want them all.
right, right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was it. But nowadays, I don't know what people would do. Like it used to be, the humane services would show up to catch dogs and get control. Now they don't even do that. That they don't they aren't dispatched. They investigate animal cruelty. That's pretty much all they do.
Hmm.
It's really interesting how that's gone down. Like I said, there's got to be a happy medium somewhere. It
Well,
just
I'll put it into terms of, and I know it's gonna sound absurd to some people, but this is a very white Western viewpoint on how to treat animals because
what that's the
if I
thing. Other
go,
countries, no,
yeah,
animals
well,
are
even in
animals.
our own country, if I go to a mostly Mexican neighborhood and it's like a poor Mexican neighborhood, they don't care about those dogs.
No,
They
it
don't.
was how dogs were treated when I was a kid, probably.
Yeah, they,
Yeah. Or if
somebody,
you go
I
to,
watched somebody run over somebody's dog, and the owner was right there on the porch, and he was smoking something, whatever it was, a little pipe or something, and he
mhm,
didn't even break stride in his puffs of that dog getting run over. He was like, whatever, it is what it
right,
is.
dogs should have known better. That is,
Yeah.
that's not far from. There were many people like that when I was a kid. If your dog was dumb enough to go into the street, that was that dog's problem.
Hmm.
It was he should have known better. He was old enough to know he was on the street. I got out of the way. Why didn't he get out of the way? He was
Hmm.
following me along. I can't keep him around. It was really it was a different time, and you see that in other places. It leads me to believe that an overabundance of luxury and riches really twists your mind, and you detach yourself from the practical
Yeah.
part of the world. I remember reading a Yahoo post years ago that showed how people receive steaks from certain cows. It was Kobe beef, and they were showing how they were taken in and processed and all this. And there was outrage by a particular woman. This is not an urban myth. This is real. I saw it. This was probably 15, 20 years ago. Now, she could have been a young teenage girl or something. But she was horrified that people would be so cruel to animals as to eat them. Why didn't they get their meat from the grocery store like everybody else? That was what she literally wrote, and she was
Beautiful.
not kidding.
Poetic.
Yes,
Why don't we all just do that?
she
What?
was not kidding.
She's the real thinker of life.
I'm, I was not aware there was a steak bush, you
What a
know,
prolific idea. Let's all just do that
or there
instead.
was a roast tree. She had no idea where meat came from, and I'm sure it was a shocking thing for her.
hmm
So, yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's to even have somebody with that idea. I was laughing when I saw it and stunned that somebody could be so detached from reality. And
hmm
that's what it is. To me, these people are deluded and know that if you have to deal with somebody who walks their cat around in a baby carriage at least 2 or 3 times a week when the weather's nice.
Now I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt, and I'm going to think the only justification I have is that cat is missing all of its limbs, and the
No,
only way to get it to
no, I
have
saw the
some
cat. It was a large tabby cat, and
overfeeding it, of course,
yeah, it
which
was.
is considered cruelty now.
Well, nobody's going to arrest her, I
Oh,
promise
yeah,
you.
yeah, I'm sure.
But there was nothing wrong with that cat. That
hmm
was physical anyway.
hmm
Yeah, it
Well,
was fine.
hmm bit obesity happening, so that's fine.
It might have had diabetes or something. But
Cat diabetes.
you're right, feline
Need some
diabetes.
insulin injection or something
Right,
on
it
there.
might have been that kind of thing. But
Yeah. Well, and
pretty bad.
you go into I'm waiting. I'm waiting. It hasn't happened yet, and I'm really surprised of jobs supplying pet insurance to their people as well. And I'm sure there is some people, maybe I just haven't heard of it. It's just
Well,
not
that's the
commonplace
thing.
enough.
Pet insurance is property and casualty insurance. It is not health insurance. And when people
hmm
learn of this who bother to get pet insurance, they become outraged that it's
Oh
not.
yeah, I'm
It
sure.
is liability insurance and comprehensive insurance for property. Pets are property. That's what people you can go buy a pet. You can't go buy a human. No, I adopt him. That's a euphemism. I'm telling you, it's a euphemism. They say that so you don't feel bad about buying your animal, but you are purchasing that animal. They give you a
hmm
little adoption letter. They can call it whatever they want. It
hmm
is a transaction. You are not adopting anything.
Yeah, you're
They
literally
just
buying
call
it.
it that to make yes. And so when you get insurance for that animal, for any damage it may suffer to make it back, you're buying a benefit so that it's better. And it's property and casualty insurance in
You
case
know
it's damaged, in
what's a
case
great
the property is
example?
damaged.
A great example of that is you remember when we were living in that neighborhood, and our neighbor had that man that let that dog run around the neighborhood, and that dog
That
ran into
white
his.
mean dog?
It wasn't. No. It was a golden retriever. It was a
Oh
golden
no.
retriever.
Yeah, that's not mean dog.
No, it was a very nice dog, but he got tired of that dog running into his yard and pooping all over it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And but this was, I believe, the guy was attorney, or he was some way in the legal field,
Mm-hmm.
the guy who lets his dog roam around the neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
And he had a lot of money because he owned a bunch of land in the back of the neighborhoods and such, and he would go hunt in those lands, right?
Mm-hmm.
And our neighbor got his little pellet gun and he popped it in the butt, and that guy lost his mind,
Right, I remember that. I remember
and he
now.
tried to sue him and everything like that.
Right. Called the
And
sheriff's department, had him brought on charges, which were dismissed because the guy was just running a dog out of his property. He was pooping on his lawn,
right,
and he didn't want to get bit by the dog, so he just hit him with a weak pellet gun to
yeah,
make him
one
yelp.
he had like a pump gun, and one
Right.
pumped it just to
And
get a
that
little scare on
neighbor,
it.
I remember that neighbor, super nice guy. And I
Yeah.
know he talked to him multiple times and the guy just ignored him.
hmm
I'm glad that I didn't run the guy out because if the guy would have approached me like that, it would have not gone well. That's all
Yeah,
I'm going to
he
say.
was very aggressive with
Yes,
our
he was.
neighborhood,
I
which
remember. I remember walking outside. Then he kind of just looked at me, and I looked at him, but he shut up. But I remember I asked our neighbor. I said, "Why did you let him talk to you that way and get aggressive? I mean, he almost kicked in your door." He goes, "I knew he was upset, and he would finally just stop." I said, "Well,
hmm
he didn't stop till I walked outside, and every other neighbor within
hmm
100 yards walked outside. That's when he realized he was making a spectacle of himself, and he quit." But I was waiting for him to get aggressive with me because I knew how angry he was, and he didn't. I guess he collected himself after all those people were out. But yeah, that was crazy.
Yeah.
And what Mike did was pretty minor. He didn't even hurt that dog. He just caused him a little pain to yelp
Hmm.
and run away because he wasn't trying to hurt him. He was just trying to
No.
get him out of there.
Yeah.
But it was interesting. And the sheriff's department did come out because a guy knew somebody in the sheriff's department, and
Oh
they
yeah.
issued
He's a big guy. He has some money and he had some
yeah
pull.
he issued a summons to our neighbor. I remember that, like a ticket,
Hmm.
a misdemeanor charge for animal cruelty at that time.
Yep.
And then the DA called our neighbor because he told me about it after. And okay, tell me what happened. Says that you discharged a firearm
Right.
in the city limits without. No, I did not discharge a firearm. Well, why do I have this here on the summons? He goes, the guy had to write something. He goes, what happened? And he told him the story. He goes, it was a pellet gun. It was on minimum. It was like a pump, a little small pistol pump,
Hmm.
minimum thing just to get the pellet out of there and get the dog's attention. He says, and I shot the dog because it was in my yard, and I told him to stop having him go over to my yard because I was tired of picking up his dog poop.
Hmm.
And I went to scare the dog, and it got aggressive with me, so I didn't want to get bitten in my own yard because of that dog. So I finally just shot it in the rump with a pellet gun. And he said he talked to the assistant DA. She goes, "Is that the truth?" And he goes, "Ma'am, I'm telling you, that's exactly what happened." He said, "The dog's fine. You can call him and ask him." He said 15 minutes later, she called him back and told him, "Don't worry about it. The charges have been dropped."
Wow. And I
Yeah,
don't think that would work the same way now, even though
you
that was
don't.
only what 18 years ago, maybe. I don't know how long ago that
15
was.
ish, 15, 18 years ago, something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was pretty young, but I remember it, and I remember meeting that guy a couple of times, and he has his own issues. He has superiority complex and all type of issues. I could even tell when I was
Yeah,
young that guy has a lot of issues.
I ran across him a couple times, and I just looked at him. I said hello once, and I didn't like him just because I had heard. I tried to be open minded, but I think he knew I wouldn't tolerate much abuse, so he never really said much to me.
Hmm.
Uh, because I give off that impression. If you come at me a certain way, I'm going to look at you, and I
Hmm.
won't even respond to you. I,
Hmm.
I, I'll just look at you like, "Are you sure this is how you want to do this?"
Right.
And then I'll start asking you questions or talking to you in a way that lets you know what you're doing is not appreciated and won't be tolerated. So
Hmm.
people get that from me real quick. So I think he got that, and he decided he just wasn't going to engage with me.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember being young and talking to that guy, and I could already figure out, okay, this guy's got some issues.
Yeah, he
You
must
couldn't put it into
have.
words from how young I was, but I could already
Right,
tell. Like, oh, okay,
right,
don't hang around this guy. He's got problems.
right.
But
Something
that yeah,
surely
to
was up.
put that was he's in the legal field and he still tries to put into animal cruelty in this matter, even
Well, a
though
lot
he
of them
knows
do it.
better.
Well,
You
a
know
lot
he
of them
knew
do it
better.
because they know they can get away with it, or they think they can get away with it. Who's going to do anything to them?
Hmm.
That's how he did it. I asked our neighbor. I said, "Why don't you press charges against him?" He
Hmm.
goes, "What for?" I said, "The assault in your home, the damage to
Hmm.
your door, the attempt at intimidation and harassment, the disturbing your peace." "Oh man, I don't want to do that. He lives 2 doors over. He's a neighbor." I was like, "He's not acting like a neighbor."
Right.
And he goes, "Nah, I'm not going to do it." He goes, "Maybe if he comes over to me and says something snotty or does something to me, I'll pray." Mike was just a super nice guy. He just wouldn't do it. But I was like, I wouldn't tolerate it at all. I would have to do something. I'd have to go to somebody.
I
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. I said,
Couldn't let it go. But yeah,
no,
Mike was super nice guy, so I know he probably handled that a lot better. And it's probably why it didn't escalate because I'm sure Mike just was like, okay, whatever. I
I
don't really
wouldn't
care
have.
what you say to my face.
I can be a nice guy too. I prefer to be that way. But if you don't let me, I am fine with not.
Hmm.
I won't like it, but I know how to wade those waters. I'm very good at it. So I
Hmm.
invented some strokes myself. So I will just try to avoid it if at all possible. If you let me, I will avoid it. But if you
Hmm.
don't let me, if I have no choice, okay, I'll suit up. Let's go. And I'd prefer not to though. So
Right. But yeah, I brought that in because I found it funny that somebody even knowledgeable of the legal field would then
No, that has
That's how
nothing to
much
do with
value
it.
he put on his
I
dog. Is what
found,
I find on it.
my life has been in the legal world, although I'm not an attorney, in various capacities, mostly as an investigator, but also as somebody who trained investigators, owned a private investigation agency, and was in the state and organized and trained investigators, and liaison with DA's offices, state police, sheriff's departments, and worked closely in the past with federal agencies, FBI and New Orleans Police Department with their financial crimes unit for many years. In fact, they almost recruited me to work in that bureau with them. So I've worked in it in a different capacity, but it does not mean that they're better people. It just means that they're attracted to that for whatever reason. And often they're amoral as can be.
Yeah.
They went there because they think it's some way for them to get power. And I never liked those people, and I always stayed away from those people if I could help it,
Mm,
because ultimately they're going to try to abuse other people, and I'm going to have something to say about it.
hmm.
So I would just avoid them if I could.
Yeah.
Um, but it's the same way, like I said, I'm glad you I'm glad you remembered that, because I totally forgot about that, and you
Hmm.
brought it back. But that's interesting. So what are we talking about for our next podcast?
Aren't we talking about superheroes, right?
Superhero movies, right?
Superhero movies.
Are we sick of it yet, or what? I think that's it. Um, for me, it's interesting because they're doing all the stories I read when I could get my hands on a comic book when I was a young teenager. So I get to see these characters come to life with those
Hmm.
stories brought up 40 years later into a story for the big screen. Of course, they change it to make it more palatable for the movies. But that's all we've been having, like the last, what, 10, 15 years. Is That's been a large part of the movie
Feels
thing.
like longer. I don't
And I
know.
know a lot of people are sick of it. So we're going to talk about it, and we'll get it from both ends. Me, seeing these characters come alive. But even now, it'd have to be a pretty strong pull to get me to watch it, I think.
Hmm.
Uh, but and you, who never had the benefit of seeing those, like, they're coming out of nowhere for you. So
Hmm.
it'll be interesting to see how it goes. And thank you for watching and listening. We're now on a number of podcasts: Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Audible. We're also on YouTube, of course, uh, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, and Radio Public. So thank you for listening, and we'll catch up with you next time on our next podcast, Marvel Superhero Movies. Are you sick of it yet? Talk to you later. I'm Boomer X.
I'm Millennial Z.
Take
Peace.
care.